The wind screamed across the barren plains of Dravathar, shrieking like a wounded beast. Storms gathered on the horizon, throwing shadows across the rust-colored soil. The air was dry, acrid with the smell of oxidized iron and dust kicked up by supply transports long gone. And in the middle of this desolation stood a figure too small, too human, to belong. Alara stepped off the shuttle, her boots sinking half an inch into gritty, blood-hued earth. Her breath caught. The gravity here was heavier than Earth's. Every movement felt like dragging weights behind her. She squared her shoulders, determined not to show weakness. The transport's engines hissed closed behind her, leaving silence and eyes. They stared at her from under hoods, behind visors, through the slits of scarred, alien faces. Mercenaries, ex-cons, scavengers. All species, all armed. All watching the girl who dared show up in a place where humans were considered ornamental at best and expendable at worst. Fresh meat, someone sneered, his voice a guttural scrape. A crimson-scaled glyphis with tusks jutting from his lower jaw stepped forward. Didn't think Earth still made him this small. Laughter rippled through the outpost. It was a low, feral sound, amused but sharp-edged. Alara said nothing. She adjusted the strap of her satchel and walked past the alien toward the command tent, forcing her steps to remain even, unaffected. A Sarthian female, built like a tank with arms thicker than Alara's waist, blocked the tent flap. Her 4 yellow eyes blinked in staggered rhythm. Orders. Alara handed over a data slate. Her fingers trembled slightly, but the Sarthian didn't notice. After a scan and a grunt, the alien stepped aside. "Try not to die too quick, recruit," she muttered. Inside, the tent stank of ozone, stale breath, and old oil. Holograms flickered over a table where Commander Mern, a cyborg barely clinging to his remaining biological parts, glanced up. His glowing eye locked on Alara, scanning. "You're the replacement?" he asked, incredulous. Alara nodded. "Alara Voss. Recon and Salvage, Human Division." "I didn't ask for a child," he muttered. "I'm not a child, sir." He grunted, non-committal, then waved toward a cot in the corner. "Stow your gear. You go out with the team at dawn." She turned, then paused. "Which team?" "Team 5. The ones who lost their last scout. Try not to end up like him." Outside, the laughter had resumed, but it cut off when she emerged from the tent, carrying herself with a quiet dignity no one here had earned. That night, Alara lay awake under a patchy ceiling of sheet metal and tarp. The wind howled around the compound like it was hunting. The others slept in clusters. Alien physiology, naturally clannish, territorial. She had her own corner, uninvited and unbothered. That suited her. She pulled a small device from her pack, activating a holographic image of a mountain range back on Earth. It flickered, warping occasionally from interference. Her eyes softened, not out of sentimentality, but memory. Those slopes had taught her how to climb, how to hide, how to survive without being seen. Footsteps crunched outside. She silenced the projection. A shadow passed beyond the tent's wall, tall, upright, oddly still. Then it vanished. She exhaled, calm, unshaken. She rolled on her side and closed her eyes, but not before whispering into the air. Still watching. The wind didn't answer, but something moved in the dark beyond the walls. Morning came harsh and colorless. The sun was a pale giant on the horizon, illuminating the planet in shades of rust and bone. Alara met her new team near the gate. 3 aliens, all taller, broader, and looking her over like she was a misplaced pet. Earth sent a mascot, drawled Korik, the glyphis from earlier. He shouldered a massive plasma cannon and smirked. The Sarthian female, Brinja, snorted. "Hope she runs fast." The third, a wiry, silent species Alara didn't recognize, said nothing, just clicked something with its mouth and walked on. They moved out in silence, trudging across the cracked terrain toward an abandoned convoy. Alara scanned with her visor, tracking heat signatures and power traces. Her findings were dismissed. Scouts should observe, not pretend to command. Korik snapped when she warned of possible movement ahead. She bit her tongue. She didn't want command. She wanted competence. Team 5 lacked it. Hours passed. Heat beat down like a hammer, and yet the chill in her bones never left. She kept glancing toward the ridgelines, watching, waiting. That's when she heard it again, the low, almost imperceptible rumble, more vibration than sound. The others didn't notice. They joked and mocked, turning their backs. Alara crouched beside the hull of a downed transport, scanning tracks. They were faint, deep, too deep for any standard fauna. Her fingers brushed over one, 5 digits. Clawed. Massive. She stood quickly, eyes narrowing. We're not alone. Of course we're not. Korik scoffed. The planet's full of vermin. You'd know if you'd lasted more than a week here. But she was already moving, circling wide, mapping out a flank. Her instinct screamed. Something was watching them, and not just from afar. When the ambush hit, it was quiet. One moment, the team was descending into a crater. The next, energy bolts erupted from the cliffs above. 2 bandits in scavenged armor leapt down, firing. Cora cursed, stumbling. The silent alien dropped immediately, chest blown open. Brinja fought back, roaring, but another volley drove them into cover. Alara pressed against a rock, her mind racing. This wasn't random. The attackers had waited, watched, predicted. She pivoted around the edge and laid down suppressing fire. Not to kill, but to draw attention. And it worked. The bandits focused on her. One crept closer, grinning behind a cracked visor. Pretty little Earth girl. You're gonna die with dirt in your mouth. He raised his weapon, then stopped. A low growl split the air. Not from any of them. The bandit turned just as a shadow detached from the crater's edge. A blur of fur, muscle, and fury struck him, claws rending, jaws clamping onto his throat. He didn't scream. He didn't have time. The rest of the battle faded into background noise. The creature, massive, spotted like a hyena but with a feline grace and reptilian scales along its spine, moved with terrifying precision. It didn't attack the team. Only the bandits. Korik stared, slack-jawed. What is that? Alara didn't answer. She knelt beside the body of the silent alien, checking for signs of life. None. She shut his eyes gently, then turned to the creature. It stood a few feet away, breathing steady, eyes locked on her. Golden. Intelligent. The others backed away slowly. Is it yours? Brinja asked hoarsely. Alara met the creature's gaze. It's not mine, she said softly. But it came anyway. They returned to camp in silence. No one mocked her this time. That night, the fire crackled in the common yard. The alien mercenaries sat in quiet clusters, casting furtive glances her way. The apex predator lay beside her tent, head on its massive paws, golden eyes half-lidded, but never sleeping. Alara cleaned her rifle with methodical care. The silence from the others was louder than any insult they had thrown. Commander Myrn passed by, stopping a moment to study the creature. That yours? She didn't look up. It's not anyone's. He nodded slowly, then moved on. The wind picked up again, whistling across the walls. Somewhere in the night, a pack of scavengers howled and were quickly silenced. Alara looked into the fire. Her hands didn't shake anymore. She didn't need their approval. She never had. But now they listened. And tomorrow, she'd show them why. The next morning arrived without fanfare. The skies over Dravathar cloaked in coppery haze, as though the sun itself had lost interest in shining. The camp was eerily quiet. Word of what happened the previous day had spread, about the bandit ambush, the loss of the silent scout, and most of all, the creature. No one said its name. No one dared. But they all looked at Alara differently now. She moved through the yard with a quiet, efficient purpose. There was no swagger in her step, no need for it. Her authority wasn't claimed. It had been witnessed. Even Korik gave her a grudging nod as she passed, although he followed it with a grumble and turned away. Respect was a fragile currency here, but fear lasted. Inside the command tent, Commander Myrn gestured her forward, eyes narrowed. That thing's still with you. Alara met his gaze. It comes and goes. I don't control it, but it protects you. She didn't answer. Not directly. It protected us. There's a difference. He tapped on a console, bringing up a topographic map filled with pulsing red markers. Bandit activity is escalating. They've been pushing into Zone Delta, scavenging tech we haven't even surveyed yet. We've lost 2 teams already. You want reconnaissance. I want deterrence. Myrn corrected, I twitching slightly. They're testing us. I want them to be afraid to try again. Alara studied the map. Who's the team? You pick. It wasn't a test. It was an experiment. Myrn wanted to see if the miracle would repeat itself. If the creature, whatever it was, would come again, so long as she was in danger. She didn't argue. Instead, she walked out and found Korik and Brynja near the gear depot. Suit up. We're heading to Zone Delta. Korik looked at her for a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. No complaints. No jokes. Brynja checked her weapons and followed in silence. Alara wasn't sure if the change in their behavior meant respect or fear, but in Dravathar, the two often looked the same. They traveled light and fast, cutting across ridges and through dried-up gulches until the red sky dimmed into purplish dusk. The zone ahead was part jungle, part scrapyard, a result of a centuries-old crash site. Ancient vessels, half buried and crawling with rust, created a labyrinth of wreckage and concealment, perfect for ambushes. Alara scanned the surroundings constantly. The creature had not returned. This is suicide, Korik muttered as he kicked through tangled wires and fallen debris. They know we'll come sniffing after their raids. Then let's not give them the chance to set the trap, Alara said. We spring it on our terms. Brynja halted suddenly, raising her weapon. Her eyes scanned the shadows beneath a collapsed ship frame. Movement. Alara crouched beside a broken hull and adjusted her visor. Heat signatures. 4 of them. Close. Too close. She signaled silently, flanking right. They came fast. Bandits in repurposed armor, their faces obscured by goggles and rebreathers. 2 from the front, 2 from above, rappelling from a broken bulkhead. Korik fired first, plasma bolts lighting the air. The first bandit dropped, his armor melting like wax. Brynja's roar followed, charging headlong into the chaos, her heavy fists turning another attacker's helmet to scrap. Alara moved like water, calculated, swift, unseen. Her rifle barked once, twice, dropping the 3rd attacker mid-leap. The 4th fled into the maze of wreckage. Don't chase, she called. But Korik already had. He vanished into the twisted alleys of steel and vine, cursing as he went. Alara gave Brynja a look, then sprinted after him. The world narrowed to sound and shadow. Alara's boots struck metal, then soft earth, then metal again. She followed the signs, a disturbed patch of moss, scuffed bulkhead edges. Korik's heavy breathing echoed ahead. Then silence. Alara slowed, bringing her weapon up. Korik, she whispered. No reply. She moved forward, each step calculated. The ship's husk around her groaned in the wind. Somewhere nearby, something scratched against metal. She turned the corner and froze. Korik stood motionless, eyes wide, weapon hanging limp. And before him, at the far end of the corridor, stood a figure not alien, not bandit, but something else. Humanoid in shape, wrapped in strange, bone-plated armor. Its eyes glowed with cold intelligence. It said nothing. It didn't need to. The air around it pulsed with danger, not of instinct, but intent. Alara stepped beside Korik, slowly raising her rifle. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. Then it vanished, one step forward, one flicker, and it was gone like a mirage. In its place, a faint smell of ozone and something sharper, blood, perhaps, lingered in the air. Korik exhaled, finally speaking. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," Alara said. But her heart pounded harder than it had during the ambush. That thing, whoever or whatever it was, had watched them, judged them, and left. Back at camp that night, the silence was louder than ever. No one spoke of the mission, or the ambush, or the figure in the shipwreck. Even Mern said nothing when they handed in their report. He simply nodded and waved them off. Alara returned to her corner and sat alone, staring into the distance. The creature had not come this time. Not during the ambush. Not during the encounter. She wasn't disappointed. She was unsettled. It had protected her once. But what if it didn't again? Across the yard, Brynja approached, settling beside her without a word. They sat in silence for a long while before Brynja spoke. "I used to think humans were weak. Soft." Alara said nothing. "But you." Brynja's eyes reflected the faint glow of the generator lamps. "You're like this planet. Dry. Tough. Unbending." Alara's voice was quiet. "No one's born unbending. You just learn not to break." Brynja considered that, then stood and walked away. Later, as the wind swept across the plains and the moonlight turned the world silver, Alara sat awake, listening, waiting. Then she felt it. Not heard, not seen, but known. A shift in the air, a weight in the silence. She stood slowly, stepping into the open. Behind the storage units, beyond the fencing, two golden eyes watched her. The creature was back. She walked toward it, never looking away. It didn't move, didn't growl. It simply existed there, massive and still, its breath slow and deep. "I didn't need you today," she said aloud. A blink. One ear twitched. "But you came anyway." No response. None needed. She didn't know what bonded it to her, whether it was protection, curiosity, or something deeper. But she knew the connection was real and dangerous. For her, for them, for everything around them. The predator turned and disappeared into the shadows. She returned to her cot, sleep finally taking her. For the first time, dreams came. And in those dreams, she wasn't being hunted. She was leading the hunt, and the enemy had yet to realize it. The air in Dravathar thickened over the following days, as if the planet itself sensed the tightening coil of conflict. Reports trickled in with increasing urgency, supply convoys disappearing, outposts going dark, patrols finding only scorched earth and strange claw marks burned into hulls. Alara stood in the strategy tent again, this time surrounded by holomaps thick with red. Commander Mern didn't look up. "They're escalating. Whoever's leading these raids isn't just scavenging. They're hunting." Alara studied the pattern of attacks. "They're forming a circle, like they're surrounding something. Or someone." Mern finally looked up, eyes narrowing. "You think it's about the predator?" She didn't answer immediately. Something in her gut twisted. This wasn't about her anymore. It hadn't been for a while. "If it is, we need to stop them before they finish whatever they're doing." "Then you're leading the strike team." Korik grunted from across the room. "I hope you're planning on bringing your pet. We're going to need it." Alara turned sharply. "It's not a pet, and it comes when it wants. Not when I call." "Convenient," he muttered, then sighed. "Just don't let it decide we're the threat next time." The team assembled at dusk. Brynja, stoic and unreadable, stood to Alara's right. Korik adjusted his gauntlet-mounted blade beside her. Two other soldiers, new recruits, green-eyed and eager, rounded out the squad. They moved swiftly through the forest perimeter, weaving through cracked terrain and shadowed ravines. The wreckage fields had changed. The air shimmered strangely, as though something ancient stirred beneath the surface. Night fell, and the stars emerged, but they didn't comfort. Instead, They reminded Alara of the vast unknowns pressing in. Her team hunkered down on a ridge overlooking a valley scarred by conflict. Below, the bandit forces gathered around a makeshift fortress constructed from pieces of old-world debris and fusion core remnants. Lights flickered. Machines hummed. Something pulsed at the center, a beacon, or perhaps a trap. Brynja crouched beside her. That's not scavenged tech. That's alien. Alara nodded. They've made contact with someone. Or something. Korik spat into the dirt. Terrific. Bandits with toys they don't understand. She considered their approach. A frontal assault was suicide. But infiltration, under cover of darkness, might give them answers. We go in quiet, she ordered. Find the source. Disrupt the signal. Pull back. They slid down the ridge like ghosts, ducking behind shattered consoles and half-buried hulls. The closer they got, the more unnatural the air felt. It buzzed with static and something more primal, a hum beneath the skin. Inside the compound, the world changed. Lights pulsed in rhythmic patterns, too calculated for human design. The walls throbbed with unfamiliar symbols, as if alive. Alara felt the presence again, the weight of something watching. They passed a group of guards, silent and alert. Oddly still. Their armor was different, sleek, fused with organic patterns. One turned his head, just slightly, and Alara froze. His eyes glowed faintly blue. Not goggles. Not lenses. From within. They're enhanced, she whispered. Modified. By who? Brynja asked. Alara shook her head. I don't know. They reached the core of the structure, a central chamber filled with cables and glowing orbs. At the center, suspended in a containment field, floated a sphere pulsing with violet energy. Surrounding it stood 3 figures, not bandits, not soldiers. They radiated control. Their armor seemed to shift in the light, and one of them turned slowly toward her position. Alara ducked back, but too late. Alarms screamed to life. Lights snapped to full brightness. The compound shifted as turrets unfolded from walls and drones took flight. Move, she yelled. They scattered, sprinting back toward the exit route. One of the new recruits was caught in the crossfire, his cry echoing briefly before silencing. Brynja and Korik covered the retreat, firing in precise, brutal bursts. Then the ground trembled. From the heart of the structure came a roar, a deep, alien resonance that shook bone and soul alike. A creature burst forth. Not hers, not the one she knew. This one was different, taller, sleeker, armored with plates that shimmered. It moved with impossible speed, cleaving through wreckage and soldier alike. It wasn't fighting for territory. It was hunting rivals. Alara slid behind a column, eyes wide. This changed everything. There wasn't one predator. There were more. Maybe many more. The bandits hadn't found a beast. They'd made contact with its kind, and they were being used. She motioned to the others. Regroup. We pull back now. Korik hesitated. We could take it. With yours. Maybe we can win this. But Alara knew better. This wasn't a fight they could win. Not yet. Fall back. That's an order. The creature turned toward them, its eyes blazing with strange light. It opened its mouth, and a howl tore through the night, more signal than scream. Something held back. From the ridge above, a blur of shadow and teeth descended. Her predator. The clash was titanic. Flesh and armor, speed and savagery. 2 apex forces meeting in a fury of motion. The team could only run, the thunder of the duel echoing behind them. Alara risked one glance back. The 2 beasts locked in brutal combat, claw against claw, jaws snapping. The world shifted again, not in geography, but in understanding. They weren't just survivors. They were caught in the middle of something far older. When they finally reached the ridge, breathless and bleeding, Alara turned. The compound was in flames. The signal had ceased, and in the distance, a single silhouette emerged from the smoke. Her predator, alive but limping. It didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge them. It simply passed through the ruins and vanished into the black. Brynja sat heavily beside her. Still think this is about us. Alara didn't respond. She was thinking about the blue-eyed soldiers, the alien tech, the other predator. This wasn't a rebellion or a series of raids. This was a prelude, and they were running out of time. The scorched battlefield lay silent, smoke coiling skyward like the last whispers of defiance. Scavengers had begun circling above, their cries distant and eerie, echoing over the craters where war had danced. Alara stood among the wreckage, her boots sinking into ash and dust. The predator beside her remained still, bloodied but alive, its massive chest rising and falling with a quiet rhythm that almost mimicked her own. Behind them, the survivors gathered, silent, hollow-eyed but standing. Myrn, burned and bruised, moved with a limp. Korik supported Brynja, her arm in a makeshift sling, her eyes darting to every movement in the trees. No one spoke yet. They waited. For what? They weren't sure. A signal, a breath, a final blow. But none came. Instead, the sky, torn by fire and smoke, gave way to a dull blue light. Daylight began reclaiming the planet, inch by inch, warming the blood-stained soil and the broken hulls of ships that no longer hummed with power. And in that stillness, the weight of it all settled on Alara's shoulders. They had survived. At what cost? She turned toward the predator, searching its one good eye for some trace of understanding. It stared back, unreadable, then began walking, slowly, deliberately, toward the heart of the crater where the signal tower had once stood. Alara followed without speaking. She didn't need to ask why. The wreckage crackled underfoot. Broken fragments of hybrid tech shimmered with residual energy. Bits of bone, metal, and sinew fused together in grotesque mockeries of life. This wasn't just a weapon. It had been a forge, something meant to turn life into tools. Alara crouched beside the remains of the core she had destroyed. Her fingers brushed over the melted edge. Still warm. She could feel it. Whatever intelligence had directed this assault hadn't been fully eradicated. Severed, yes, but not dead. Somewhere beyond the stars, it would wait. Regrow. Remember. Alara. Korik's voice broke through the quiet. She looked up. He stood at the rim of the crater, eyes locked on hers. What now? She stood slowly, the dust rising around her. We bury our dead. We salvage what we can. We prepare. For what? For the others. You think this was the end? This was a probe. A test. Her voice didn't waver, though her hands trembled slightly. And now they know we fight back. Korik's jaw clenched. He nodded, then turned to rally the others. As the crew began moving again, patching wounds and gathering fallen comrades, Alara wandered beyond the crater. The predator followed at a distance. Its presence wasn't comforting, not exactly, but familiar. A reminder that something primal had stood with them when civilization nearly crumbled. That night, the survivors lit no fires. They rested in silence, under the canopy of a bruised sky. Stars blinked through the atmosphere like watchful eyes. Alara sat alone at the edge of camp, staring at the horizon. Her thoughts spiraled. Had this all begun because of her curiosity? Or had it always been fated? Their arrival on Dravathar, triggering ancient alarms buried in time? The predator moved beside her, then sat. Its silence, unlike the others, didn't feel awkward. It simply was. A presence. A shadow that had chosen not to consume her, but to stand beside her. I used to believe humanity would always be the apex, she said, not expecting an answer. We built empires, mapped stars, cracked atoms. But out here, we're barely a whisper. The creature's head tilted, as if listening, or understanding. Still, she continued, we didn't break. Not completely. From the trees, a rustle. Alara tensed. The predator didn't move, only lifted its head slightly. The sound faded. Nothing emerged. It wasn't over. Not yet. In the following weeks, the survivors worked tirelessly. They established a new base atop higher ground, reinforcing defenses with salvaged alien tech. Myrn and Brinja deciphered fragments of the enemy's architecture, slowly peeling back the layers of its hive mind network. Every discovery confirmed their fears. What they had destroyed was one of many nodes, a single voice in a choir spread across galaxies. And yet, for the first time, there was unity. The different species and factions that had once bickered now operated as one. Fear had become fuel, and Alara, once mocked, now stood at the center of it all, not as a commander, but as something more dangerous, a symbol. She trained with the predator daily, not in words, but motion, reflex, discipline. She learned the rhythm of its movements, the way it read danger before it arrived. It taught her how to listen, not just hear, to watch, not just see. And through this, she began to change. Her hesitation gave way to instinct. Her doubts hardened into resolve. "You're different," Korik said one morning, watching her spar. "Sharper, like one of them." She didn't deny it. "Maybe that's the only way to survive what's coming." "No," he said. "It's how we win." But victory had its price. One evening, while scouting a northern ridge, Brinja's team was ambushed. By what, they couldn't say. No bodies were left. Only signs of struggle. Blood. Drag marks. Vanishing into the underbrush. The predator sniffed the air and growled. A deep, low sound that chilled everyone nearby. They weren't alone. Whatever remnants of the enemy had survived were adapting. Changing tactics. Testing the survivors just as their creators had tested them. It was a cycle of escalation. The predator didn't seem afraid, but wary. Almost reverent. That night, Alara dreamed. She stood in a city of glass and bone, surrounded by shadows with burning eyes. One stepped forward, cloaked in stars. Its voice echoed in her skull. "You have touched the veil." She tried to speak, but her mouth held no sound. "They know you now. You have drawn their gaze." "Who are you?" she managed to think. "We are what waits." She woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The predator stood at the entrance to her quarters, silent, watchful, as if it too had heard. Time passed. Wounds healed. Fortifications rose. But the air carried tension, like the static before a storm. Myrn intercepted a new signal, fragmented, barely readable. It repeated coordinates. Deep space. A starless void. "A trap," he warned. "Or a call for help," Alara said. "Maybe another world fell first." "You want to leave?" "I want to see what's out there before it sees us first." There was a vote. The majority agreed. A small team, including Alara, Korik, and the Predator, would investigate. Not to fight, to learn, to understand the scale of the threat, and prepare. As they boarded the modified scout ship, the crew gathered to watch them off. No cheers, no farewells, just silent nods. Shared purpose. The ship lifted from Dravathar, engines humming with borrowed alien tech. As the planet shrank behind them, Alara stared at her reflection in the viewport. Her eyes were no longer just human. There was something else there now. Something older, sharper. Beside her, the Predator settled into a crouch. Watchful, ready. They were no longer prey. They were the warning. The stars ahead stretched into infinity. And somewhere in that darkness, the next chapter waited.